Hello and welcome to Pact Publishing. My name is Atendra Chaturvedi. In this section, we will look at upgrading vSphere 6.x deployments to vSphere 6.5. In this section, we will look at the Update Manager version 6.5 installation and configuration. We will look at the Windows-based version as well as the latest vCenter Server Appliance version 6.5 embedded Update Manager. There's a section on the Update Manager download service 6.5 installation and configuration as well. This is on the Windows based side, but it's really important because it's not covered very often. We have a lab for that. We will then go through the process of using our Update Manager capabilities to patch vSphere deployments. We will upgrade from vSphere 6.0 in a lab to vSphere 6.0 update 2, and then we will upgrade that deployment to vSphere 6.5. We will also install and upgrade our vCenter versions from version 6.0 to version 6.5 in a lab environment. In this video, we will look into the Update Manager version 6.5. The Update Manager is also known as the VUM or the WUM, the installation and configuration of version 6.5. We will look at the Update Manager version 6.5 installation and configuration in a Windows environment, and obviously it will be in a lab environment, as is most of our course. We will also look at the latest implementation of the Update Manager, which is embedded in the vCenter Server Appliance, the VCSA version 6.5. Again, logged remotely into a native Windows 2012 R2 bare metal server at address 192.168.0.67. I have a network drive attached to it, and which has the vCenter Server version 6.5, the Windows version image, and in that image you will find a folder called Update Manager. I'm going to double click on Update Manager and go down to the VMware Update Manager application. Right click and run as administrator. I allow it to run. It asks me the language. It's going through its configuration. It's now preparing to install. And it came back with a warning message that setup has detected that the Microsoft.NET Framework 3.5 SP1 prereq is not installed. This will be installed before the actual product installation starts, which is fine. Remember, I'm running a very recent version of Windows Server 2012 R2. You may not have this problem. I click OK, and it goes through the process of installing .NET 3.5 SP1. So it installed .NET 3.5 SP1, and we will now install the VMware vSphere Update Manager by clicking Next. I accept the terms. I click Next. Okay. Now it says it'll upgrade ESXi 5.5 and 6.0 host to ESXi 6.5, and in our labs later on we will actually go through the process of updating an ESXi 6.0 host to ESXi 6.5. The checkbox here is checked, which says download updates from default sources immediately after installation. Now I can deselect this option if I want to look at the default download sources before the download, or I want to use a shared repository by using an Update Manager data service source. I'm going to leave this alone and let the updates come in and be stored on this server and under the control of Update Manager for now. So I'll just click Next, and then I click on Next. I will fix this. My SSO domain name was incorrect. I put in pactpub1, should have been pactpub branch. It requires a database, and what we're going to do is to look at the options here, which is basically enter a 64-bit DSN. The key here is to use a bundled database, we have to install the SQL Server 2012 Express for small deployments by launching the VMware vSphere Update Manager as autorun, which I actually had not done, and that is the reason why I have to enter a DSN name. But I'm looking to use the Microsoft SQL Server 2012 Express instance. So all we achieved by right-clicking and then run as administrator was actually to install the prerequisites of the .NET 3.5 SP1. So we're going to go back, and I will come back to this screen after I install the SQL Server 2012 Express instance. So when I do that, basically it starts up the SQL Server 2012 installation. So it's going through its process of installing SQL Server 2012 Express, and I will pause until that is done. So the important part is to use autorun, and I ran it as administrator and everything is fine. Before that, I went directly to the application installer and ran it that way as administrator, and it stopped because there was no option available to use the Express version of SQL Server as an embedded database. And all that happened there was that the prerequisites of .NET Framework 3.5 SP1 were taken care of. So the SQL Server 2012 Express setup is proceeding. So once the installation of SQL Server 2012 Express completed, it put me back into the vSphere Update Manager again as before. And we will quickly step through this process. You've seen this once before. I will click Next, accept the license agreement, Next. We've explained the download updates earlier. The username is it's packed pub branch dot local, which is the SSO domain. For the vCenter server that we're going to connect this to, and specify how this vSphere Update Manager should be defined on the network. Please make sure this IP address or host name can be accessed from both vCenter server and hosts. Look at the various options. The reason it brings this up is because I have I believe 5 or 6, I think it's 6 NICs that are available to this Windows host. I'm going to keep it really simple and just this is the one I've been using all the time, so I'll just do that. I have an internet connection. We can click on this. I'm not using a proxy actually, so I'm going to leave that alone, and then I'll click Next. I can always make the proxy changes later on as well. There is a capability to do that. Click Next to install the folder. So Update Manager is going to be installed. I'm not going to worry too much about this. Infrastructure is fine, and this is a reasonable place for it as well. Of course, if you have different drives available, then you would make the appropriate changes. So I'm going to click on Next, and it's ready to begin installation. And it is going through the process of installing the Update Manager. So I will pause and come back to it when there is something more interesting to show you. So it is now registering the Update Manager extension with a vCenter server. Interestingly enough, it's using IP6 addresses. So here we have it. We hit finish. It's successfully installed, and that is how one installs the Update Manager. Of course, we'll show you the next steps as well. So after the installation of the Update Manager was completed on packedpub branch.local, I logged back into my vCenter server that's running on the Windows 2012 R2 server there. And as you can see, there's a new tab here, which is the Update Manager tab. So when I click the Update Manager tab, I get the various options that I have, the user interface, which is available for Update Manager, which basically is you either go to the admin view, which is where you can actually administer the Update Manager. You can manage it, which means you can set up the various baselines and so on, and we'll go into that in more detail later. Or you can actually go back to attaching baselines and this of course one would need to have in place before one does remediation, and we'll talk more about baselines and so on later on. Just to give you a brief idea of the user interface, there's a new tab which is the Update Manager tab that actually opens up, and then you have another area which is the administration area for the Update Manager server, and then this is the area where one attaches baselines and so on to do remediation, which we will see very shortly. So we are back in the lab. We're looking at Update Manager, and we will cover the attach baseline, scan for update, stage patches, remediate, and so on when we actually do the upgrade and patching of ESXi servers. For now, let's go to the admin view and take a look at manage settings. You can see there are a lot of settings here. Let's go through them reasonably quickly. Network connectivity. This is how various clients communicate with the Update Manager server. This was set at installation time. And Update Manager patch store that's used, and server ports and the ports that need to be open. The patches on this hosted machine, which is .67. This is where the Windows based vCenter is actually running. Of course, this can be edited, okay, and then you need to restart. So you can change the patch store address. Don't want to do that. Let's look at download settings. These are the download settings here for downloading new patches and virtual appliance upgrades, either at intervals in download schedule or immediately clicking download now. So for example, I can download patches and VA upgrades, and I can import patches in the repository. So if I click on import patches, it'll go to a file, a zip file, for example, that I had downloaded separately, and I could then extract the patches from that zip file. It comes in handy for devices such as devices from Intel and stuff like that that may not yet have their patch available as part of an ESXi based patch. So we're going to cancel out of that. The download now would go directly to VMware sites basically, and then it would look at start downloading those patch definitions. You can put a download schedule. The process has started, 25%. You can set a download schedule, enable scheduled downloads. So what I have is I run these on a daily frequency, which is quite okay. Of course, this can be changed as well. You can schedule that. Notifications that come from VMware, you can run them hourly, so that if there's something happening out on the internet, there's some kind of an exploit somewhere, and if VMware is aware of that, as well as maybe there's some patches available and so on, that can be obtained. Of course, all these can be edited as well. We look at the VM settings. So whenever you remediate a virtual machine, should you take a snapshot to be able to roll back? And the answer is yes. That's very good. You don't delete those snapshots. And of course, the standard warning that if you have snapshots, then you may be impacting the performance of that virtual machine. You can take a snapshot. You can either not delete it, or you can keep it for a certain number of hours until you're sure that your remediated virtual machine is back up and running. Host cluster settings. We have seen, or we will be seeing when we do the upgrades, that the host has to go into maintenance mode. And so what are we going to do with the virtual machines that are operational? So if I edit those settings, the options are I can power off the virtual machines, I can suspend the virtual machines, or do not change the VM power state. Retry entering maintenance mode, distributed power management, fault tolerance, and high availability admission control, because if you're running in a cluster, those virtual machines will be migrated, and it's all totally controlled. Also, given your admission control is still satisfied, your constraints are still satisfied, you can enable parallel remediation of hosts in a cluster if there is ample capability or resources available for admission control. And you can migrate powered off and suspended VMs to other hosts if a host must enter maintenance mode. Usually not necessary the powered off and suspended VMs, but if you want them operational, of course, then you want to do that if you want to turn them on while the remediation is actually happening. And the virtual apps, do you want to do a smart boot about after remediation? And enabling smart boot selectively reboots the virtual appliances in the vApp to maintain the startup dependencies so that you don't have any issues. Okay, so smart boot stays in place. This is all very standard. So you can see that this is a very smart system. Host baselines. Host baselines are basically a group of patches or upgrades that are specific to hosts. Some are predefined here. So there's a critical host patches and non-critical host patches that are defined. And one can attach these baselines to a host, which we will do in a later lab. And based on that, the system makes sure that they are all up to date. And the same thing applies for virtual machines and virtual appliance baselines, VMware tools upgrade, VM hardware upgrades, so that it matches the host to match. Let's scroll this a bit more to match the host. And again, these are all predefined. We have a patch repository, so the system is currently downloading those patches. I believe we set it up earlier for to download either now or on a scheduled basis. We just did one just a few minutes ago, download patch definitions. So we are completely up to date with our definitions. The patches, as you can see, range from 5.5 through version 6 as well. And these patches are now in the patch repository. One can then set a baseline for these patches, and then hosts can be patched when that patch baseline is applied to that. Of course, critical patches can be automatically done because they are predefined. As you saw here, there are critical host patches are defined. So the ones that were just downloaded you saw are selectively put into the critical and the non-critical baselines, so that when you just say critical host baselines, everything that is critical, that's pertinent and applicable to your version of ESXi is automatically applied. When you want to do a host upgrade, you need ESXi images. You can import the ESXi images from your workstation, and then you create a baseline. So I go back to the compliance view and I create a baseline, for example, this baseline. And what I do is in that baseline, I actually specify this baseline image that I picked up in this admin view, this baseline image that's here. And then you have the virtual appliance upgrades. There are many, so a lot of them apply to the VMA, the vRealize appliances. Let me just scroll this out to the side a bit more. So vRealize Business for Cloud, Identity Appliance, some Zimbra, some VMware Postgres as well. That's interesting. But it's quite back level, release date 2015. So I'm sure my version 6 is good here. So these are the virtual appliance upgrades that are also available. And you can again attach these to virtual appliances with baselines and so on, and you are able to upgrade that. When you look at monitor, there are events and notifications. So here's the events which were applicable to update manager. So when we had done our initial upgrade, or I have done an upgrade of server 202. So the events that happened are all actually out there. Notifications, there are no notifications so far because I think in our settings we've said check them once a day. Let's click on that to check notifications now, and there are no notifications from VMware that we need to take action on. So that's the way this update manager works, and we will use it to patch and upgrade in the next series of labs. In this lab, I'm logged into the vSphere web client, and I'm logged into my vCenter server appliance at address 192.168.0.210. As you can see, this is a version 6.5 appliance. Here we go. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because the update manager capability is now included in the vCenter appliance. So there's a tab on the top right hand side, just like in the Windows based version. You have exactly the same options up here as well. So if I go into the admin view As an example, you have the settings, including all the standard ones that are available there. You have the host baselines. You can create new baselines, or you can see here these are the predefined critical and non-critical host patches. We can click on these to get some of the details. So this is already operational and is downloading based on the settings, the download settings and the download schedule. The host baselines, as we've seen, and the virtual machine and the virtual appliance baselines, same way. The patch repository exists. The patches are being downloaded. ESXi images are imported in exactly the same way as with the Windows-based version. Here we go. It's just have to browse and pick up the ESXi image, and then that can be used in a ESXi upgrade. And of course, the virtual appliance upgrades we can download at any point in time. I click on download now, and that process would start as well. When I go to the compliance view, you have the same options here: attach baseline, and then you scan the inventory object for updates. Then you stage the patches. It makes things work a lot faster, and you have less downtime if the patches are already staged on the inventory object, usually a host. Then you can remediate as well, and then of course the go to admin view can attach a baseline. Click on that. It's exactly the same way as on the Windows based version. So the point of this very short video is to show you that the update manager capability is now integrated into the vCenter server appliance, which is a huge step forward, and it's going to be very popular. In a later video, I have a lab that takes you through in great detail the entire update manager process in terms of using it to patch ESXi 6.0 up to the update 2 level, and then to upgrade ESXi 6.0 from 6.0 upgrade 2 to version 6.5. The process is shown on a Windows version in that lab, but it works exactly the same way as it would if I had done it using this interface with the vCenter server appliance version 6.5. In the next video, we will look at the Update Manager Download Service version 6.5. The Update Manager Download Service is also known as the UMDS, and we will look at its installation and management.